The gala was the kind of event most people could only dream of attending. It was being held at an extravagant ballroom in the heart of the city, where the rich and powerful gathered to show off their wealth and influence. The building was beautiful, its tall columns and sparkling chandeliers catching the light as guests sipped champagne and mingled. The sound of laughter and music filled the air as people talked about their latest deals and big plans. This was not just a party, it was a celebration of success, of power, and of people who controlled the world in ways most couldn't even imagine. Among the guests was a woman who didn't quite fit the usual image. She was a black woman, dressed in a sleek, elegant gown, her skin glowing under the soft lighting. She had worked her way to this moment, achieving success through sheer determination, intelligence, and hard work. Her name was Maya, and although she wasn't from the world of billionaires or high society, she had earned her place here. She had built a business empire from the ground up, overcoming countless obstacles along the way. She had broken through barriers that most people couldn't even see, and now she was a name that was respected in the business world. Maya had been invited to the gala as a VIP guest, an acknowledgement of her achievements. Her business was on the verge of securing a massive deal with the billionaire family who hosted the gala. The deal was worth billions, and it could change everything for both her and the family involved. This was a big moment for Maya, a chance to solidify her position as a key player in the business world. But as she entered the grand ballroom, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She had been to events like this before, but tonight felt different. The guests were dressed in their finest, and everyone seemed to be trying to outdo each other. The air was thick with a kind of quiet competition. Maya walked through the crowd, trying to keep her focus on the reason she was there, the deal. She had worked so hard for this moment, and she wasn't going to let anything distract her. As she made her way across the room, she noticed the billionaire family, standing together and laughing. They were the center of attention, as usual. The father, a tall man with a sharp suit and a cold smile, was talking to some other guests. His children, both in their late 20s, were by his side, holding court with a few wealthy individuals. Maya couldn't help but notice how effortlessly they seemed to command respect. Everything about them screamed power. But then, as she got closer, something strange happened. One of the billionaire children, a young woman named Claire, looked at Maya and laughed. It wasn't a kind laugh, it was mocking, dismissive. Maya felt a wave of unease wash over her, but she tried to ignore it. She smiled politely and moved forward, but she couldn't forget that look. Claire's gaze followed her for a moment longer, and Maya could feel the judgment behind it. It wasn't just Claire. The entire family seemed to regard Maya as an outsider. She wasn't dressed in the same way as everyone else, even though her gown was beautiful. She wasn't part of their world, and they made sure she knew it. Maya had been prepared for this. She had faced judgment and bias her entire life, but it didn't make it any easier to deal with. It still hurt, especially when it came from people who didn't know her but thought they knew everything about her just by looking at her. Maya had learned to rise above this kind of treatment. She had been forced to grow a thick skin, to let the small things slide. But tonight, something felt different. She was here for a purpose, to prove herself as an equal to the people in this room, not to be treated like someone beneath them. As the evening wore on, Maya tried to focus on the event, on the potential deal she was there to discuss. But the glances, the whispers, the quiet mockery of the billionaire family never left her mind. She could hear the quiet laughter from Claire and her friends as they pointed in her direction, making it clear that they thought she didn't belong. It was subtle, but it was there, and Maya could feel every bit of it. At one point, Maya found herself standing near a large window, looking out over the city. The lights of the city stretched out before her, a reminder of everything she had worked for, everything she had overcome. She had come so far, and yet, in this moment, it felt like she was back to square one. All the progress, all the success, didn't seem to matter to the people in this room. To them, she was still an outsider. She stood there for a moment, letting the cool breeze from the open window calm her nerves. She knew she couldn't let these people get to her. She had worked too hard, fought too much to let their ignorance affect her. But the sting of their words and actions was hard to ignore. As the evening continued, Maya decided it was time to move forward with the business part of the night. The host of the event, one of the billionaire family members, had been keeping an eye on her, clearly aware of the business deal that was at stake. They approached her, offering to discuss the details. Maya took a deep breath, reminding herself that this was why she was here. With determination, she walked back into the heart of the ballroom, where the family awaited her. But as she walked past Claire again, the young woman made another comment, one that was loud enough for Maya to hear. It was another dismissive remark about her appearance, a thinly veiled jab at her race and her place in this world. The comment was sharp and cruel, meant to hurt, and it hit Maya harder than anything she had faced before. But this time, something inside Maya shifted. She didn't let it show on her face, but she made a silent vow. She would not let them win. She would not let their mockery be the thing that defined her. Tonight, she would make them see who she really was, not just a businesswoman, but someone who had fought every day for her place at the table. She wasn't just here to sign a deal. She was here to show them that she belonged. And she wasn't going to let anyone forget it. Maya took a deep breath and tried to stay focused. The gala was a chance to build her future, but it was also quickly becoming a test of her patience. She had already decided that she wouldn't let the disrespect from the billionaire family ruin her evening. But as the night went on, it was becoming harder and harder to keep her composure. Claire, the young woman from the billionaire family, had been making snide remarks all evening. It wasn't just the looks or the whispered comments. This time, it was something more direct, something calculated. As Maya walked toward the bar, hoping for a brief moment of calm, Claire suddenly approached her. "Do you really think you're going to get this deal?" Claire's voice was sweet, almost like a mockery of politeness. "I mean, you don't exactly fit in with, well, the crowd here, do you?" Maya paused, feeling a wave of frustration building up inside her. She wasn't sure if she should laugh at how ridiculous Claire sounded or if she should respond with something sharp. But instead of giving in to the impulse to argue, Maya smiled, a small smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I think I fit in just fine," Maya said, her voice calm, even though the words were like a quiet storm. Claire raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by Maya's response. But before she could say anything else, Maya turned away and made her way to the side of the room where the business deal was supposed to take place. The group of influential men and women who would be negotiating the details of the multi-billion-dollar deal with her were already gathered, waiting for her arrival. Maya had worked tirelessly to get to this point. She had earned every inch of the respect she had gained in her industry. This deal, if it went through, would change everything for her business and for her. It was more than just money, it was proof that she could succeed on her own terms, no matter how many people doubted her. But as she approached the group, she could feel the energy shift. The room fell silent, and the eyes of the billionaires shifted toward her. There was an almost tangible tension in the air. They knew why she was here. They knew the deal was important. But Maya couldn't shake the feeling that they still saw her as nothing more than an outsider. She sat down at the table, and the negotiation began. On the surface, everything seemed to be moving forward as planned. But every time someone in the room spoke, Maya noticed the little things, the slight pauses in their speech, the way their eyes would wander when they looked at her, the careful choice of words they used. It was as if they were trying not to offend her, but also trying to remind her that she was, in their minds, still beneath them. Maya focused on the paperwork in front of her, trying to ignore the feeling of being judged. She had come so far, and she couldn't afford to let these little jabs throw her off. But as the conversation continued, the comments from earlier still echoed in her mind. Claire's words were like a constant hum in the background, reminding her that some people just couldn't see past their own biases. Just then, one of the men from the billionaire family, a man named Richard, leaned forward, speaking in a voice that was low but firm. "Maya, I think you'll find that our world works a bit differently than the one you're used to. We operate on a level that takes years to understand. I'm not sure you're prepared for what's ahead." His words stung, not because they were true, but because they were meant to be a subtle jab, a reminder of the power dynamics at play. Richard's tone was polite, but his words were sharp, a way of making her feel small, even without outright saying it. Maya's hand tightened around the pen she was holding, but she kept her face neutral. This was the moment she had been preparing for, the moment when she would prove them wrong. They wanted her to back down, to second-guess herself. But Maya wasn't going to do that. She was stronger than they thought, and she would show them just how much she had earned her place at this table. She took a deep breath and then spoke, her voice clear and steady. "I think you misunderstand me, Richard. I've worked hard for everything I have, and I'm more than prepared for whatever comes next." Richard blinked, caught off guard by her calm response. The room fell silent for a moment, and for the first time that evening, the billionaires seemed to hesitate. There was no quick comeback, no easy way to dismiss her. They weren't used to being confronted in such a direct, respectful way. Maya could feel a shift in the room. It wasn't much, but it was enough to give her hope. She wasn't going to let their arrogance make her feel small. She had spent too many years building her reputation, too many sleepless nights making her company one of the top in the world. She wasn't just a woman in their world, she was a force, and they needed to see that. But as the evening continued, the tension never fully dissipated. The billionaires may have been trying to play nice, but the underlying disrespect was still there. Claire's mocking smile, Richard's condescending words, it all added up, and Maya could feel it in every glance they cast her way. It was clear that, despite her accomplishments, they still didn't see her as their equal. As the meeting wrapped up, Maya stood, her mind already racing with thoughts of how she would proceed. She had come here to make a deal, but she had also come here to make a point. She wasn't just negotiating a contract, she was negotiating her place in a world that had always tried to push her to the side. As she walked out of the room, she could hear the faint whispers of the billionaire family behind her. It was as if they thought they could still get away with treating her like an outsider. But Maya wasn't about to let that happen. She had a plan, and it was one they never saw coming. After the meeting, Maya walked out of the ballroom, feeling a mixture of emotions. The tension was still thick in the air, and although she had stood her ground, she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The way the billionaire family treated her, despite her success, made her wonder how much they truly valued her as a business partner. It wasn't just about the words spoken or the sly glances, they didn't respect her, not really. She stepped outside the building, the cool night air hitting her face as she walked down the grand staircase. Maya needed a moment to collect her thoughts. She had been planning for this deal for months, but now that it was within reach, it didn't feel as satisfying as she had imagined. Something about the whole evening had felt off. She needed to think about her next move, but more than that, she needed to take control of the situation. Maya reached for her phone and dialed a number, waiting for the line to connect. The call rang twice before the voice on the other end picked up. "Maya," came the voice of Tom, one of her trusted advisors. "What's going on? How did the meeting go?" Maya took a deep breath, her mind still racing. "It didn't go as planned. They're underestimating me, Tom. They still see me as someone who doesn't belong in their world." Tom was quiet for a moment, sensing the frustration in her voice. "I thought we were prepared for that. You've been through worse." "I know," Maya said, her voice tinged with resolve. "But this time, it's different. This deal is worth billions, and they're not taking me seriously. They think they can disrespect me and still get the deal. I'm not going to let that happen. Tom was quiet for a moment before responding. So, what's your plan? Maya looked out at the city, the lights sparkling below. The world felt small from up here, but in this moment, it felt like she was on the edge of something big. I'm not just going to walk away from the deal. But I'm also not going to let them think they can get away with treating me like this. I'm going to make them see exactly who they're dealing with. She could hear the smile in Tom's voice. That's the Maya I know. What do you need from me? I need you to dig into their operations, Tom. Find me anything that will make them look bad. Any loopholes, any unethical practices, anything I can use to back out of this deal if I have to. I'm not just going to sit back and let them walk all over me. There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. You got it? I'll get to work on it right away. Maya ended the call and stood for a moment, letting the weight of the decision settle on her shoulders. She had always prided herself on doing things the right way, but she also knew that sometimes, the world didn't play by the rules. If she was going to make this deal work for her and for her business, she had to be ready to play the game on her own terms. The next few days were a whirlwind. Maya barely had time to sleep, let alone relax. She had people working around the clock, digging into the billionaire family's business dealings. It wasn't easy. These were powerful people with a lot of resources, and they knew how to cover their tracks. But Maya wasn't afraid of a challenge. She had built her success by being smart, determined, and strategic, and this was no different. As the days passed, she started to uncover some troubling details. The billionaire family's empire wasn't as flawless as it appeared on the surface. There were reports of questionable business practices, deals that hadn't been fully disclosed, partnerships that seemed to be built on shaky foundations, and a few instances where the family had skirted the law just enough to avoid any serious consequences. It wasn't enough to destroy them, but it was enough to create doubt. Maya knew she was getting close. If she could gather enough evidence, she would have the leverage she needed to pull out of the deal if they continued to treat her poorly. But she also knew that she had to be careful. If she exposed too much too soon, it could backfire. She needed to strike at the right moment, when the damage would be most impactful. As she reviewed the documents and reports, a plan began to form in her mind. She wouldn't just walk away from the deal, she would make them regret underestimating her. She would cancel the deal, yes, but she would do it in a way that would make the billionaire family's public image crumble. She would expose their flaws and make sure the world knew what kind of people they really were. She called Tom again, her voice filled with determination. I've got what I need. We're going to make our move soon. Tom's voice was filled with approval. You sure you're ready? This is going to make waves. Maya smiled to herself, the weight of the decision still there but no longer as heavy. I've been ready for this moment my whole life, Tom. Let's do it. A few days later, Maya stood in front of the billionaire family once again, this time in a private meeting room. The atmosphere was tense. She had called them together, and they didn't know what to expect. As she entered the room, the family members looked at her with a mix of curiosity and arrogance, clearly still underestimating her. But Maya wasn't about to let them get away with it. She sat down at the table, her back straight, her hands folded calmly in front of her. The billionaire family's leader, Richard, was the first to speak. Maya, we're glad you could make it. I hope you've had some time to think about the deal. Maya didn't waste any time. I've thought about it long enough, she said, her voice steady and clear. And I've decided to cancel the deal. The room fell silent. Richard's eyes narrowed in disbelief. What? You can't be serious. We put a lot of work into this deal. I'm serious, Maya replied. And the more I think about it, the more I realize that I'm better off walking away. Richard's face reddened with anger, but Maya held her ground. I've looked into your business practices. There are things about your operations that don't sit right with me. You've cut corners, skirted the law, and treated people like they don't matter. And I'm not going to be a part of that. The billionaire family stared at her in shock, unable to believe what was happening. Maya had just delivered the blow they never saw coming. She wasn't just walking away from a deal, she was exposing their flaws for the world to see. And it wasn't just about business anymore. It was about respect. The room fell silent after Maya's words. Richard's face had turned a shade of red that matched the anger burning in his eyes. He wasn't used to being challenged, let alone in front of his family and business associates. For a brief moment, it seemed as though he didn't know how to respond. His mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. The other members of the family shifted in their seats, uncomfortable with the shift in power that was happening in the room. Maya sat calmly, her hands folded on the table. Her face was calm, almost serene, but her mind was focused. This was the moment she had been waiting for. It wasn't just about walking away from the deal anymore, it was about proving to these people, and to herself, that she would not be underestimated. The billionaire family had made it clear that they didn't see her as an equal, and now it was time for them to realize the true strength of her position. Richard was the first to speak, his voice now filled with irritation. You think you can just walk away from a deal like this? Do you know how much this will cost you, Maya? Not to mention what it will cost us. Maya didn't flinch at the threat. She had already thought about the consequences. She knew that canceling the deal would have a ripple effect. It would cause waves in the business world, and the billionaire family would be furious. But it would also send a clear message to them, and to everyone watching, that respect could not be bought. I'm fully aware of what this will cost me, Maya replied, her voice steady. But the real cost would be working with a company that doesn't share my values. I've worked hard to build my business, and I'm not going to compromise my integrity for a billion-dollar deal. Richard leaned forward, his fists clenched on the table. You really think you can afford to walk away? You've been fighting your whole life to get to where you are, Maya. And now, you're just going to throw it all away. Maya met his gaze without blinking. I've worked hard, yes. But I'm not going to compromise who I am, or what I stand for, just for money. There are more deals out there, more opportunities. But there's only one me. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, the tension in the room was unbearable. Maya knew this wasn't just a business decision. It was personal. She had spent so many years fighting against the biases and prejudices that others had placed on her, and now she wasn't going to let anyone disrespect her. The room was silent for a long time, and Maya could see that Richard was struggling to process what was happening. He was used to winning, used to getting what he wanted. But Maya was different. She wasn't intimidated by his wealth or his power. She had fought against odds much bigger than him. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Richard spoke again, but his voice was now tinged with frustration and disbelief. You'll regret this, Maya. Do you really think anyone will take you seriously after this? You'll be the one left with nothing. Maya shook her head, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. I don't need your approval. I've already built something far bigger than your family could ever imagine. And if this deal means compromising who I am, then I don't need it. As Maya spoke, she could feel the weight of her words. She wasn't just standing up for herself, she was standing up for every person who had ever been underestimated, every person who had ever been made to feel small. This wasn't just about a business deal, it was about respect. It was about showing the world that you could rise to the top on your own terms, without bending to anyone's will. Richard seemed to seethe with anger, but his face betrayed a hint of doubt. He wasn't sure how to play this anymore. The tables had turned, and now, Maya was the one in control. I don't think you understand the position you're in, Richard said, his voice quieter now, almost pleading. You're walking away from an opportunity that could change everything for you. A deal like this doesn't come around every day. Maya shook her head. And I'm not looking for opportunities that come at the expense of my dignity. This deal may have been huge, but the cost of losing myself is far too high. At this, the other members of the billionaire family began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. They had seen the kind of woman Maya was: strong, determined, and unwilling to be intimidated. They had underestimated her before, but now, they were starting to understand just how much power she truly had. The more they tried to push her, the more she seemed to dig her heels in. There was a long pause as the tension in the room grew. Maya didn't look away, her posture straight and confident. She was no longer concerned with their anger or their threats. She had made her decision, and nothing they said would change that. Finally, it was Claire, Richard's daughter, who spoke. Her voice was sharp, almost mocking, but there was a hint of uncertainty in her words. You really think you can cancel this deal and walk away scot-free? You have no idea what you're doing, do you? Maya looked at Claire, her expression unreadable. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm making sure that my business, my reputation, and my values are never for sale. And I'm making sure that people like you understand that respect isn't something you can buy. Claire seemed to bristle at Maya's words, but Richard held up his hand, silencing her. He took a deep breath, clearly trying to regain his composure. Fine, he said, his voice heavy with resignation. If this is what you want, Maya, then the deal is off. But don't say I didn't warn you. Maya stood up slowly, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. I'm not afraid of what's coming. And neither should you be. But remember, respect is earned, not given. And tonight, you just lost mine. With that, Maya turned and walked out of the room, the sound of her heels echoing in the silence behind her. She had made her point. The deal was over, but in its place, she had gained something much more valuable: her dignity, her self-respect, and the satisfaction of knowing that she had stood up for herself in a world that had too often tried to push her down. Maya walked out of the billionaire family's private office, her heart still pounding, but now, she felt a sense of liberation. The weight that had hung over her for days, weeks even, was finally lifting. She had done it. She had stood up for herself and walked away from a deal worth billions, a deal that many would have fought to keep. But for Maya, it wasn't just about the money. It had never been. It was about integrity, respect, and making sure she wasn't compromising who she was for anyone, not even the most powerful family in the world. The walk back to her car was calm, almost peaceful, despite the storm that had just passed in that meeting. Maya could feel the cool night air on her face, and for the first time that evening, she allowed herself to take a deep breath. She had made the right decision. She had chosen herself. But as she stepped into her car and closed the door behind her, she knew there would be consequences. The news would break soon. The media would have a field day, and the billionaire family would not take this lightly. Their anger would be palpable, their attempts at retaliation would be relentless. She was prepared for that. In fact, she was counting on it. Over the next few days, the world found out what Maya had done. The news spread quickly, first in the business circles and then beyond. Headlines across the globe read, "Billion-dollar deal with black businesswomen cancelled by billionaire family." But it wasn't just about the cancellation. The more the media dug into the story, the more they uncovered about the family's business practices. Maya had known this would happen. She had already made sure that her team had gathered enough evidence to expose the flaws in their operations without directly attacking them. The truth about the billionaire's unethical practices began to surface: hidden deals, questionable partnerships, and other shady dealings. Maya had never intended for things to go public like this. She didn't want to hurt anyone or destroy careers. But sometimes, standing up for what was right meant making hard decisions, and the billionaire family's disregard for respect and fairness had crossed the line. They had underestimated her, assuming they could simply brush her aside. Now, they would pay the price. For Maya, it wasn't about getting revenge. It was about showing the world that you could rise to the top without stepping on others. It was about proving that integrity mattered. And most of all, it was about proving that no matter how powerful someone was, they couldn't buy respect, they had to earn it. As the media storm raged on, Maya kept a low profile. She knew the attention would eventually die down, but in the meantime, she had other things to focus on. She threw herself back into her work, her company thriving as usual. The cancelled deal had been a blow, yes, but it didn't define her. She knew she was on the right path, and there were other opportunities waiting for her. There always were. Her phone buzzed late one evening. It was a message from Tom, her trusted advisor. He had been by her side through thick and thin, and his words always brought a sense of calm in the chaos. Maya, the story's everywhere now. But guess what? Investors are reaching out. They're seeing you as a leader now, someone who won't back down. People respect you more than ever. I think you're going to get more deals than you ever imagined. Maya smiled at the message. It was true. The respect she had earned from this bold move was already paying off. Investors, business leaders, and even some of her competitors were now taking a closer look at her. They admired her strength, her courage to stand up for what was right, and the way she handled the entire situation with grace and professionalism. The power of walking away from something that didn't align with her values was clearer than ever. A few weeks later, Maya received a call that would change everything. It was from a major international company, one that had long been a competitor to the billionaire family. They had been watching the fallout from the cancelled deal, and they were impressed with how Maya had handled the situation. They offered her a partnership, one that was far more lucrative than the original deal she had walked away from. It was a chance to take her business to new heights, with the backing of a company that truly valued her expertise and her integrity. Maya sat back in her chair, stunned. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Not just a bigger deal, but a deal that came with the respect and trust she had always sought. She had shown the world that doing the right thing was not just the morally right choice, but the best business choice too. As Maya continued to build her business empire, the billionaire family's reputation slowly began to unravel. While they still held power in many circles, the cracks were visible to everyone. Their attempts to salvage their image only seemed to make matters worse. The media, which had initially been fascinated by the drama of the cancelled deal, now turned their focus to the family's questionable practices. Public opinion shifted. The world had seen the truth, and there was no going back. For Maya, the satisfaction didn't come from watching the billionaire family struggle. It came from knowing that she had done the right thing. She had remained true to herself, and in doing so, she had built something stronger than money. She had built her own legacy. Months later, when the dust had finally settled, Maya was sitting in her office, looking out over the skyline of the city. Her phone buzzed once again, and this time, it was a message from an old friend. The message read, "You've changed the game, Maya. People are talking about what you did. And you didn't just change the way business is done, you changed the way we think about power and respect. You made us all rethink what really matters." Maya leaned back in her chair, letting the message sink in. She had done it. She had taken a stand, not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been made to feel small. She had turned away from a billion-dollar deal, a choice that had once seemed impossible, and in doing so, she had gained more than she could have ever imagined. She smiled to herself, knowing that the journey was far from over. The future was bright, and Maya had only just begun.